What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. This story's called How I Got My Boss Fired When He Tried to Fire Me. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. This is a bit long, but I promise it is worth the ride. This story was posted on a different site by me about a year ago, but this sub seems to be the perfect place to share it again. I have added some additional details that prior commentators were asking for the last time I posted this. Starting out, let me explain why there wasn't a mass walkout and why I am the only one that quit despite us basically being terrorized and treated like slaves. The job market was in shambles in my city at the time, with something like a 40% unemployment rate. I knew someone with a doctorate's degree in theoretical physics working at a local fast food joint, as it was literally the only place hiring. The city had quick access to 4 research universities, but he got downsized due to lower admission rates. He is now the dean of the physics department at his former school. To quit any job, no matter how bad, was financial suicide and a guarantee that you would not find a new one. I always worked customer service, food service, and hospitality since I was 14. At 24, I decided it was time to find a job with benefits and potential for career advancement. So I took a job stocking shelves overnight with a global monstrosity that started out as a mom and pop store. I felt right at home. I worked hard and constantly took the worst jobs and the worst days off to make sure I would be there on the weakest staffing days to rub elbows with management. If there was anything that occasionally came up that no one on the shift was trained to do, I would come in on my day off without pay to get trained on how to do the task, like keys, paint, accounting issues, etc., to become less disposable and more versatile. It worked, and 10 months in, I found myself with an offer to promote to low-level management starting January 1st. Starting the weekend before Thanksgiving, the overnight manager started to understaff shifts to preserve his end-of-year bonus and acted surprised when people called out. He would then bully us into staying over with threats of write-ups for not finishing our assigned stocking tasks. Upper management was notorious for just signing off on write-ups without looking into their validity. So each staff being assigned 13 plus hours of labor to complete alone in 6 hours, while typically it was approximately 4.5 to account for tending to customers as well, was no defense. Since an employee could only get 2 of those write-ups in a rolling 13-month period before termination, we all would stay over as well as skip our breaks and lunches to finish. Those write-ups were also less job-threatening, as he would simply turn a blind eye to us clocking out for breaks and lunch and returning to work. But there was a catch. Since any approved overtime would count against his $73,000 bonus, approximately 11 cents per approved hour, he would never file the approval forms for the overtime. This meant that it was considered unapproved, meaning that we were required to get approval to cut hours off our regular shifts to equal out what we stayed over. He, of course, never approved us to cut those hours. This was resulting in weekly write-ups from the same manager for unapproved overtime on those of us that made it to work every day despite the weather and missed holiday get-togethers with our families. Every week we would get our write-ups and he would get praise for getting everything done with less approved staffing hours than typically allocated. Thankfully, write-ups for unapproved overtime didn't carry a lot of weight, but for 3 months they counted against your points for promotion opportunities. This went on until the week before Christmas. When I got my weekly write-up, I was told by the store manager who offered me my promotion I would be suspended for overtime abuse the next time my manager submitted a write-up for unapproved overtime hours. Determined to not lose my promotion, I started telling the manager no. The second time I refused to stay over without him signing an overtime approval form and giving me a physical signed copy, before I hit overtime, he wrote me up for abusive actions towards a member of management and actions with intent to undermine the integrity of management and store policies. This instantly cost me my promotion, which greatly upset me, and then, like the idiot he is, he left me alone in his office to sign the write-ups and the acknowledgement that I was no longer promoting. Initially, I was just gonna accept it and resolve myself to spending the next 13 months working my tail off for minimum wage and go up for promotion as soon as they fell off. While I was reading the acknowledgement form, I found I was not eligible to promote to management until I was write-up free for 5 years. This meant 6 years and 1 month before I could even try to get promoted again, all because I followed policy. So, rather than sign it, I wrote, "Step off!" in Sharpie across his brand new desk, which he got for being such a great manager. Walked out of his office, handed him my vest and name tag, shredded the write-ups and tossed them into the air like confetti, and told his no longer smug face that it was now my personal mission to get him fired. He lost his cockiness when it sunk in I just quit. I could see little beads of panic sweat forming on his forehead as he realized that the only person capable of performing certain highly essential functions for his shift was walking out the door. He shouted after me, telling me that he could talk to the general manager and see if he could get the time frame cut down to 3 years. He offered to approve all of my overtime the rest of the season, offered me a cut of his bonus, and several other offers I can't remember. Honestly, if he'd offered to withdraw the write-ups, which was still 100% an option, but he never offered, I wouldn't have accepted it, but I might not have followed through on my threat. I was too angry and too determined, and I didn't care if I became homeless as long as I never had to work there again. Now, how did I get him fired? Well, due to certain ADA requirements, I was permitted to carry a voice recorder with me at work, so I could record important meetings, announcements, and reminders. When I got written up the first time for unapproved overtime, I started recording his requests to both me and coworkers. I never used them to dispute the write-ups, but I never deleted them either. So I uploaded all the recordings to my computer, nearly 18 hours of audio, and sent it to the home office, CCing every store manager and compliance officer in the district. When I went in for my last paycheck, he was long gone. I was offered my promotion back, but I declined. The regional director then offered me my old manager's job with a $73,000 hiring bonus. Wonder where that came from. But I still refused and said I was never returning to retail. My former manager's boss laughed and told me that everyone returns eventually. And when I did come see her, she would find me a management spot somewhere. After 5 years of being unemployed, living with my mom, and barely surviving, I moved to another state and got a job working in a state prison as a guard, and am very fulfilled. Edit! Wow! I never expected to have any upvotes. At over 150, I feel very blessed, especially for my first Reddit post ever. Thank you so much for the karma, love. Okay, honestly, I would have taken that 70K and the job, but that's just me. And who knows, maybe you can quit after a little bit and still keep that 70K. Alright, this story's called Falsely Accuse Me and Withhold My Pay? Say goodbye to your business. So this happened a little bit ago at my first job. I worked at a small local spa company. There was only about 6 workers there. I worked there for a year and a half and only met the owner once, but talked to him on the phone a lot. She was bat crap crazy, but that's beside the point. Anyway, I got hired because my friend's mom, Pam, was the manager and someone had quit in the middle of their shift, so they needed someone fast. I worked really well there and learned very fast. I was very good at the job to the point where after a couple of months, they sent new hires to be trained by me. Turnover here was bad. Despite this, I didn't get a raise or anything. It wasn't a big deal, but it would have been nice. Anyway, I was always a closer. There would be a list of things I had to do after we closed, like vacuum and dust and such, janitorial things. As months go by, Pam begins to pick apart things. A string was left on the rug. The candy bowls weren't filled, even though they weren't even half gone, etc. Nothing too big, but they made it seem like I liked their mother. What? Slowly, things started to get worse. Eventually, I was being told that I was not cleaning rooms that I know for a fact I had. Now, I admit that once in a while I would forget to clean something, but I was getting yelled at for things I knew for a fact I cleaned. My other problem was that when my coworkers would forget the same exact things, she wouldn't yell at them, but would just say, "Try to remember," or something along those lines. Eventually, Pam got other coworkers to lie so that she could report me to the owner. Many days I came right from school and would be wearing jeans. Pam left right when I got there, so after I clocked in and counted the drawer, I would go and change into my work pants. Well, it turns out other coworkers would lie and tell her I never changed. After this, I began taking pictures and timestamping them. This worked for a little while, but then my coworkers would say I changed back into jeans after that picture. And when it came to cleaning, she would say I didn't clean it well enough, etc. All of these would get turned into the owner, but she wouldn't fire me because they were so desperate for people and no one wanted to work there. I wonder why. Eventually, I quit because I had a job for the summer that gave me many more hours. In my summer job, I made the same amount of money in 7 weeks that I made in a year at the last place. Right after I left, I learned why Pam wanted me gone so badly. Pam hired her son, my ex-friend, because he was too lazy to work a job where he couldn't sit around all day. That made me mad. But even worse, they wouldn't give me my last payment. We were paid in cash. I sent multiple emails and text messages to Pam and the owner that reminded them that I needed it. When those went unanswered, I then threatened legal action. Being a high schooler, I don't believe they thought I would do anything. How wrong they were. Well, there were many reasons I was mad about this, and so I decided I'd document every single thing about that place. These include 8+ hour workdays with no breaks or lunch, both of which are required in my state, rats in the basement, ant infestation, fake security cameras, allowing underage drinking, Pam faking the amount of money we had to pay her son and daughter for under-the-table work, child labor. Pam's daughter was not old enough to work. Not fixing things like building framework, mold, etc. Allowing temperatures to go above and below the legal limits. On bad days, it was above 100 or below 50 inside. Drug use. Pam giving themselves a raise, even though they already made more than everyone else there. Selling client information. Pam compiling clients for another worker to take with them to a new company. Usually not illegal, but the way they went about it was. I don't remember the exact details. Not doing anything about harassment. Not paying workers. There'd be days where we didn't have enough money in the drawer, and the owner and/or Pam would be too lazy to go to the bank, so they would just straight up not pay us. Not only this, but prior to me leaving, I recorded some of the verbal abuse from Pam. Believe it or not, I even got them to admit to making false write-ups on me. There was more, but I can't remember what else right now. Anyway, I compiled all of this and sent it in an email to OSHA. Crap went down. In the end, both Pam and the owner were served with some hefty fines, and Pam is even facing jail time right now for fraud. The owner had to shut down their business and sell it. I don't know if the owner is facing any jail time. I also emailed every spa within 50 miles, so the owner, Pam, and some coworkers have been blacklisted from working within an hour of where we're located. I never did receive my last payment. It wasn't worth going to court over, but what came out of it was so much better. Man, I honestly would go after that paycheck though, because you never know when you might need it. But other than that, good job. I'm glad that they got what was coming to them, because those guys were jerks, 100%. This story's called, This Is How I Stopped the Gossip for Good. My mom had a fairly consistent habit of gossiping and sharing quite personal information around. We knew she was doing it, but she would adamantly deny having ever done such a thing. I wish I could remember what she did that finally made me snap. It can't even have been that important. It was just the millionth time. And for once, I wanted her to admit what she'd done and know that we knew too. So we set up the sting. My friend Jane and I approached my mom and told her that Jane was pregnant. She wasn't ready to tell her mom yet, and she was really worried what people would think about her having a baby so young. She didn't want anyone to know yet, so it had to be top secret. Having set the trap, I figured within a few weeks or so, I would have some evidence we could use. But I was so wrong. The very next day, my sister, grandma, and neighbor all asked me how my young pregnant friend was doing. When I was asked by a lady who worked at the supermarket that same day, I figured this had gone far enough and went home to confront my mom, only to have my dad ask how Jane was doing. I confronted my mom right there in front of my dad, which is when she started with the usual, "I would never do that. They must have heard from someone else" routine. I explained very shortly and clearly that we had fed her a lie to see how far it would spread, and the reaction was glorious. My mom's mouth fell open and she just had nothing to say at all. My dad, on the other hand, fell back on the sofa roaring with laughter, bemoaning the fact that he hadn't thought of this years ago. It was a moment I will treasure forever, and the point was thoroughly made. Now that my mom was aware of what had happened, I was able to satisfy all further inquiries towards my friend's health with the true story, and my mom's audience for any further gossip was somewhat reduced. That is a genius plan, and I'm so glad it worked out. Man, I would have loved to have seen just her face the moment her mind just starts scrambling when she realizes that she's caught. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.